Look who's back in the tech uploaded household. That's right, it's Fractal, and no, I'm not reviewing the Define R5 again. This time I'm taking a look at the Define S. Hello everybody and welcome to Tech Uploaded. I am Chris as always, and like I said, Fractal's back in the house, and I'm really excited about this one. This is the Define S, and while it does look a lot like the Define R5 that I looked at, about a year ago maybe now, it's been a while, there are some very definite differences with this case, and this is actually the case. This is the bad boy that's going to be used for the X99 Broadwell-E build coming up very shortly. I was actually waiting for this to arrive to get that going, so I'm very excited to have this here. But before we get into all that fun, we need to take a look at what this case has to offer and pretty much why I decided to go with it for that build. All right, well, taking a look at the Define S, you can see that it definitely takes a lot of its looks, its aesthetic form from the Define series. Now, this really reminds me of the Define R5, and that goes down to the sound dampening and flexibility of component support inside this case. Now, what has changed here is this case has a new internal layout, and it's designed pretty much around the enthusiast-oriented kind of features, such as really basically liquid cooling. There's a lot of flexibility for air cooling in here, but that's not anything crazy and new. This is geared towards water cooling, liquid cooling, whatever you want to call it. So taking a look at the outside before we get into all that business, at first glance, this may appear like it's Define R5. And I've used that case numerous times in the past, so I could definitely see being confused by that. However, this case has been updated. And basically, they removed the rarely used optical bay, and a lot of people seem to be doing this now. And instead, they're now focusing on clear, straight airflow. And basically, they're doing this for that improved water cooling support that I mentioned earlier. And this is something that I've seen a lot of manufacturers doing lately. And I gotta admit, I haven't used my optical drive in years. I haven't missed it at all in cases that don't have it. So I welcome this change. It makes more flexibility and more options available. Now, a quick tap on the side panels really does tell the tale of what's going on underneath here. These panels are substantial, and you can tell by holding them. And on top of that, you have this strategically placed dense sound absorbing material. And this really helps keep sound from bleeding out of the case, especially hard drive noise, since those drives are going to be right behind this panel. You'll also see on the top, they're using what they're calling their Maju vent fan covers, and you can take one of these off, you can take a couple of them off, you can take all of them off, depending on how you have things set up. And then the fans that are actually installed in the case are the Dynamic Series fans. Getting the usual specs out of the way first here, because hey, that's kind of boring. You can see on the back panel, you have room for three 3.5-inch drives mounted on this bad boy like you used to do with the old 2.5-inch drives. Now, you can also mount 2.5-inch drives here as well. And there's also two dedicated 2.5-inch mounting positions for those lovely, lovely SSDs that I know everybody's going to be running, because you should be running an SSD in this day and age. There's no excuse. You also have a generous amount of space on the back of this case, which is something that is really important to me. You have lots of cable management opportunities going on back here to keep everything nice and tidy. Depending on where you're at on the back of the case, you have anywhere from 20 all the way up to 40 millimeters of space between whatever you're going to have impeding your cables and the actual panel of the case itself. Now, this is really important for the windowed version of this case because it helps you keep everything clean and out of the way so that you're not seeing all those cables kind of, coming through. They've also included some Velcro straps, which is a nice little touch to help keep things nice and organized, and they do have the Fractal logo on them as well. Now, on the windowed edition that I have here, you have 8 fan positions available. You would have 9 if you didn't have that window, because there would be a fan mount right there. But in this one, we have 8, and there are filtered fan slots in the front and bottom positions with those removable air filters, which is always a welcome addition. The case does come standard with 2 Fractal Design Dynamic GP14 140mm fans included, and the case can support CPU coolers as tall as 180 millimeters. Taking a look at the front of the case, you have your usual fare with 2 USB 3.0 ports, audio in and out, a power LED and hard drive activity LED, both of which are blue, and a reset button. And you also have an area for 3 120 or 140 millimeter fans. which means that you have support for up to 360 millimeter radiators of any thickness, because there's really nothing in here that's going to get in the way of that radiator except for possibly a GPU, which I will get to later. So this means you can do 360, 280, 240, 140, or 120 millimeter radiators up here. So now looking at the top, I mentioned that ModuVent technology. You can see it at work here. You can remove one or all of the panels. Basically, you just have to go inside the case, pop one of them out, and then they kind of come out. It's hard to explain, but once you get the case, you'll kind of get a feel for how it works. It is a toolless design, so that is good. This area of the case also includes support for 3 120 or 140 millimeter fans. It also strangely has support for one 180 millimeter fan with 165 millimeter hole spacing. And really, where this area shines, water cooling again, just like the front, with support for 420, 360, 280, 240, 140, and 120 millimeter radiators. However, keep in mind that you are limited to a total thickness of 55 millimeters on the 420, 280, and 140 millimeter radiators. The rear of the case, once again, is your usual affair with an area for 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter fan or radiator. You got your I/O plate spacing, 7 expansion slots right there, and then of course the area for your power supply unit at the very bottom. Now, diving into the case, you can see just how much space you really do have here, and it is spacious, way more than it looks like from the outside. And that again is accomplished by moving those hard drive bays to the back and taking that optical drive option out. You just have tons of room up here, and really the coolest, most notable addition to me is the fact that when you open up the accessories kit, you have these little brackets, and those are for the smart reservoir mounting system, so you can easily adjust the position of your reservoir and just mount it right in here, and you're good to go. Looking right below that area, you can see that you also have pre-drilled pump holes, so they've kind of thought of that too. And then right next to that is an area to mount a 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter fan or radiator. Now, moving up to the motherboard tray area, of course you have room for ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX boards up here, with the usual area kind of cut out there for access to the rear of your CPU socket. Now, do you have a giant graphics card? Well, you're good to go here, because this can support up to a 425 millimeter long GPU. That is, of course, if you just have fans installed in the front. The length of your GPU will be limited by basically how wide, how thick your radiator is up there if you do decide to go with a radiator on the front. So get out your math skills and figure that one out if you're going to be using a radiator and a really long graphics card. And speaking of clearances, you can fit power supply units up to 180 millimeters with a bottom 120 or 140 millimeter fan. However, if you opt not to use that bottom fan location, you can use power supplies up to 300 millimeters. And finally, the dimensions. The Define S comes in at 233 by 265 by 533 millimeters, and that is with the feet, any protrusions, and the screws taken into account, because let's be real, we need to add in for those. And finally, pricing. The Define S is set at $79.99 US dollars for the non-windowed version and $89.99 for the windowed version. So you can see that there's a lot really going on here. This case has a lot to offer, and the reason that I really wanted to go with this particular case was that sturdy side panel. I mean, it just feels good. It doesn't feel chintzy. I know it's going to be quiet. I'm really tired of hearing my mechanical hard drives, especially my really big, like 2 terabyte drive that I have that I back video up onto. That one is super noisy. It's just a loud hard drive. And in the Phantix case I'm using right now, I can really hear it. It's super loud and it drives me insane. So I'm hoping that this will help cut down on that, because the drive's not going to be as close to me as it is in the Phantix case. Plus, it's going to be up against that dampening foam. But the other thing, while I'm going to go air cooling initially for the Broadwell-E build, I do plan on doing a custom water cooling setup with a water block on the GPU and the CPU with a reservoir and a pump and tubing and all that stuff. So I wanted to make sure that when I selected a case that I was picking a case that was going to make that as easy as possible for me, since I've never done it before. So we're going to start off air cooled, but then this case is going to continue to grow with me and that system as I get into some custom water cooling. So that I felt that this was a good fit. I felt the Define S was the best fit for that particular application. Plus, I've used this case before. I really like it. It's been in numerous builds I've done. My dad is still using it with his AMD build. So I actually forgot my dad had that case, by the way, until I went over there the other day. I was like, oh yeah, that's what happened to one of my Fractal cases. But all that said, I'm just excited to build in here. You know, I feel comfortable with this case, done it before, can grow with it, like I said. At this point, I'm just rambling because I'm giddy. I'm like a kid in a candy store because now I can get started with my build. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click on that subscribe button. And you can also go ahead and follow me on my social media accounts like Twitter and Instagram. And those are Tech Uploaded. And I do have a Tech Uploaded Facebook page, so go ahead and check that out. And then if you have a question and you need an immediate response or I'm not answering you somewhere else, hit me up on techuploaded@gmail.com and be like, hey, why aren't you answering me? Because then I probably will. So, you know the drill. Don't be a stranger. Check back soon.